I want to talk for a little bit about climate conspiracism, for one, and also how a lot of human beings aren't sentient. I don't mean they're NPCs because my understanding of an NPC is that they function and they have a kind of protocol they follow. I just mean non sentient people. The decisions they've made up to this point, including basic ones that allow them to live, like breathing and eating, have been up to chance. 99.9% of them die almost instantly because they don't breathe. This is just, for them, it's all random, you know? So the fires in Hawaii, pretty bad. Fire's not good unless it's you set it on purpose and it's like cooking a hot dog or something, maybe some s'mores. This fire was not good. I don't think any s'mores or hot dogs were cooked. Certainly not to an edible point. There's been a lot of conspiracy posting about the fires, and it's gotten a lot of attention. And I want to talk about this in the context of how we're all going to die. So, as we know, conservatism is anti-science. The conservative movement is an anti-science movement. It's not just ignorant, it's openly hostile towards scientific inquiry. That doesn't mean all conservatives are necessarily inclined towards conspiracy theories. You know, they might just be suspicious or ignorant in ways that are correctable, potentially. But it is getting worse. So you've probably seen this, right? This is a drive-through, the fires in Hawaii. Everything is burnt but the trees. But don't point that out or you're a conspiracy theorist. And as we can see, there are things that are burnt and there are also trees. Now, if you've seen this drama online, you've probably already seen the correct answer to this conundrum. First of all, wildfires don't torch everything in their path. Fire is unpredictable and very, very difficult to, sort of predict the movement of. It can depend on the movement of embers and wind. Also, trees have water in them. That's how they live. So that can help them out. Also, a lot of the trees that you see that are in good condition here, sorry about the noise. I really, really don't like the fact that Twitter automatically plays the audio whenever you want to pause it. What's more, many of these trees are palm trees, and palm trees are just not that flammable. They are not very flammable trees. They're like shells around the outside. They're very, very durable stalks, you know? So, this genius, you can mute the tab. Thank you, I know. This genius, right here. I also liked this one. This one was pretty good. Maui fires were so bad, a boat in the water caught on fire. I like the idea that this person believes that boats are immune to fire because they're in the water. Like being in the water gives them a kind of type resistance. And yes, as you can see, they seem to be a fan of Tim Pool. That's what they screenshotted this from. They arrived at these conclusions after watching Tim Pool, which tracks with my understanding of Tim Pool and the kind of people who watch him. I like the top comment that you guys can't see right here. I dubbed this boat Tower 7. Hashtag boat didn't burn itself. Must have been, quote, boiling water, clown world. Floating embers, crying, laughing emoji. That is what it is. Yeah, it's embers get blown over there. That's how that is. That's not suspicious at all. Skeptical emoji. Them flying embers, lol. Particularly infuriating to see a person sarcastically repeat the correct answer to something. You know what I mean? How the hell did a fire do that? Shh, you're not allowed to question it, or, quote, community notes will tell you what to believe. And then there's me, where I ask him if he thinks boats can't catch on fire. He didn't reply to me, by the way. So what does he think this is all about? Well, this person seems to believe that the government faked the fire in order to promote 15-minute cities. No faster way to build a 15-minute city, my dear. Great point. What do you think that means? I don't know, but I'm not buying the official story. Didn't I mention the feeling of a false flag a few days ago? Why, though? I don't know. 15-minute city agenda? What's a 15-minute city? Great question. So this is building up a lot of prominence in the conservative conspiracy circles. The basic idea is that they heard this term called a 15-minute city. Based on their fear-mongering, they probably heard it from the World Economic Forum because everything those guys say instantly turns into a conspiracy to the boomer conservatives here in America. The basic idea is that a 15-minute city is a city where you are a 15-minute walk away from everything you need. Grocery stores, school, daycare, whatever. It's a walkable neighborhood. A 15-minute city is basically just what all humans lived in for all of urban development up until the car was invented. Now, for some reason, because conservatives are dumb, they believe that a 15-minute city is a city in which the government blocks access within a city into 15-minute partitions, and you're not allowed to leave your zone. Like, they all turn into, like, North Korea provinces, or, like, City 17 in Half-Life, or, like, the districts in Hunger Games, where everyone gets blocked into, like, so I really wish I could explain this more to you guys, but unfortunately, this conspiracy theory genuinely is like a mental illness thing. It's just mental illness. Why would the government do? Don't ask conspiracy theorists why they would do something like that, okay? Just don't. Don't bother with the reason. I'll tell you the actual reason why they fear this, and it's racism. And the reason they're racist is because they're afraid of their white women being taken. They don't like the idea of being broken up into and contained within a bunch of racially segregated blocks. These are the kinds of people who fantasize about, or already do, live in rural areas or in prepper bunkers or in places where they have control over the demography of their neighborhood. And they fear the idea of a 15-minute city because they think it would mean police containing them within Section 8 housing where they'd have to spend time with black people. That's it. I'm really sorry, that's it. It's just a general fear of control mixed with a, like, genuinely brain dead understanding of how the government works and what it wants. And it's really funny because the 15-minute city, as they describe it, would be more of a return to tradition than anything they push for on a, like, city planning level. So there's that. Did I say segregation? I mean integrated. They don't want integrated blocks. Yeah, they don't want people to be racially integrated by force. I also saw people saying the way that the wildfires were set was via a space laser. Interestingly, the same people seem to believe both. Now, you might notice that there's an inconsistency here. This, by the way, this is just an unrelated photo that is taken as a screen cap of another video. This wasn't from Hawaii. It's literally just like an explosion with a lens artifact that causes there to be a streak of light. This is just how cameras function. Our eyeballs function like this too sometimes. You know, the reason why when you're tired or you have water in your eyes or you're blurring your eyes, you can see light sort of distort into star-like shapes is because of the ways the rods and cones in your eyes are aligned and the way light's distorted through your cornea. Cameras have a similar issue, but different because it's technology. It's different. It's similar in the sense that it can produce comparable effects, and different in the sense that cameras are not made of eyeballs. I don't think. I assume that's not how they're made. So you'll notice an inconsistency here. If the initial conspiracy theory is that the government is lighting everything on fire, but for some reason not lighting the trees on fire, I don't really get how that works. If this is a government conspiracy, wouldn't they light the trees on fire too? Like what? Like, is the idea that the government brought in millions of tons of wrecked debris and then like spread dust everywhere, but they let the trees not burn? You know, how does that work exactly? So there's that, but then also if a space laser caused it, wouldn't the fire from the space laser blaze in like a regular uncontrolled fire fashion? Like what? Like if you believe like the fire is caused by a space laser, then why did it leave the trees untouched? You know, how does that work exactly? The truth is that, like many conspiracy theories, they don't have to make sense and they don't have to be internally consistent. Conspiracy theorists usually just have a strong sense that things are wrong. They're very, incredulous. They will believe things just without any skepticism if it confirms to their priors. So they'll just say, whatever. It's why I don't really like arguing with conspiracy theorists. It's why I don't like arguing nonsense like that. There's not much you can really get from it. But there's a reason why I'm talking about this, right? There's a reason why I'm specifically referring to this. Oh, I saw this one too. A direct energy weapon? This one only has 3 likes, but I found it delightful. Look at this video that someone took of the fires in Maui and ask yourself, does this look natural or man-made? And it's smoke. I guess I just like the implication from the person who posted this that there's something unnatural about smoke. I don't really know. Oh, and then the video just breaks there. That's great. Something there looks. What is that smoke covering up, huh? What is that smoke covering up? Lasers? Deep state agents planting thousands of burnt out cars but leaving the trees untouched? What are they hiding? Isn't dark smoke something magicians use to hide their tricks? Yeah, we're returning to peasant brain. We're faltering. Oh, I saw this one as well. Again, this is a small post. I'm not suggesting that these are necessarily like gigantic, well-believed conspiracies, but I thought they were called the Maui wildfires. From the looks of it here, it seems they were the Maui mass domestic fires in the middle of the untouched wild. And then, if you look carefully here, you can see that some stuff was on fire. Actually, wait, I don't think this is even where stuff was on fire. Weren't these things demolished? Also, fire can spread from house to house. I don't, first of all, yeah, is this even Hawaii? Second of all, fires can spread from house to house without spreading to trees. Because trees have water in them and houses are often full of extremely flammable or even explosive materials. Look at the trees. No, I don't think this is Hawaii even. It's just, they just literally found like a 3D image of something. I don't even know. Just stop it. That's the Northeast in the fall. Oh, see, there you go. A blue check mark with a correct take? That's crazy. I don't know what this means. Okay, I'm getting distracted. Why am I talking about this? Okay. So, as we know, conservatives are intellectually inferior to us. I don't mean that in like a flippant way. The studies that we have indicate a general degree of lesser intelligence, lesser education, higher fear response, higher anxiety response, more resistant to change, less open minds. Their brains just don't work as good. Some of this is kind of like causative, some of it is correlative. I think that falling into conservative circles makes you stupider, and I also think stupid people are more likely to fall into them. So, you know. Right, it's peasant brain stuff. The problem here is that I think a lot of people are going to fall into this pattern of thinking as climate disasters become more and more common. So conspiracy-oriented attitudes towards like the climate have existed for as long as conservatives have been opposed to stopping climate change, because promoting conspiracism is easier than making a rational argument for allowing the planet to be destroyed. If a conservative politician wants to allow the coal industry to continue to rape the world, they can't just say that at Congress, you know? They have to bring a snowball to Congress and say something like, well, it's cold outside, so, you know, how can climate change be real? There's made a snowball outside. It's cold outside. You know, conspiracy is the easier way of pulling people away from the correct outcome here. And I think that we're going to have to deal with this more and more as time goes on. Have you guys not noticed that conspiracy theories have been getting like a lot worse lately? Like basically every day now, a post goes viral on Twitter where they say that the war in Ukraine isn't real, or they'll post a video of like, hey, while the war in Ukraine rages on, look at this. And then it's a video of some people in a pool party. That happened recently from, I think, Elijah Schaffer, who's a Nazi, by the way. Turns out the pool party was from 2022 in Israel. Had nothing to do with anything. They were even speaking in Hebrew over an intercom at some point during the video. But it doesn't matter. You know, you can just say whatever. It doesn't affect, like, you can just say things. Yeah, I feel like 2 decades ago, the conspiracy theories, I'm not saying that like all the 9/11 conspiracy theorists were rational. They weren't. They were pretty horrible back then too. But it's gotten a lot worse and it's gotten a lot more prominent. And I think it's a trauma response. I think that the people pushing these conspiracies for the most part are monstrous grifters who know they're lying and just want to make money from it. But I think the people who fall into it are people who are experiencing a kind of long-standing trauma and an inability to deal with and to acknowledge and to reconcile the complexity of the world. So they they fall further and further into patterns of thinking which allow them to simplify these things that they can't really wrap their head around, you know? I think a great example of this would be the crazy plane lady. So you've probably seen this, but a little while ago, a lady was on a plane and she turned around and she said, you know, you're not real. I know she put out an apology, yeah, a couple months afterwards. This lady, you've seen her. Everyone's seen her. It's impossible to have not seen her. I remember she turns around. I'm not going to watch the video because you've seen it already. She turns around. She leaves the plane. She's agitated. She's having a mental health episode. She turns around and she points and she says, "That man or that person is not real." And she leaves the plane. Something like that. You haven't heard. You haven't seen it. What? How? Okay. All right. So I was operating under the assumption that every human had seen this. But that's okay. Here, I'll just put it on. I have no idea why the tab audio is muted or whatever.
I'm telling you, I'm getting the fuck off, and there's a reason why I'm getting the fuck off, and everyone can either believe it or they cannot believe it. I don't give two fucks, but I am telling you right now, that motherfucker back there is not real. And you can sit on this plane and you can fucking die with them or not. I'm not going to. Bye. Say whatever you want.
Anyway, she's apologized. She was having a mental health episode and she was intoxicated. You know, nothing particularly fancy. Yeah, everyone turning back is extremely funny, though. Because, like, wouldn't you, right? Like, she points back. Like, I would look back for sure. But people, you know, I saw a lot of people look at this clip and indicate they felt that it was referring to some kind of underlying truth. Like there was something she saw that the other people there weren't. A lot of people. I think that people are getting crazier, you know? The problem is that the human mind is a rationalizing machine. It's a system that attempts to make sense of the world that you live in. And if you can't make sense of the world you live in, you have to construct things to fill in the gaps, right? So this is where religion comes from, you know? We don't know what happens after death. We don't understand a lot about the universe. If you go back far enough, people didn't know what lightning was, you know? So people will create sort of like metaphysical systems to explain and justify, to create meaning. But even in a non-like metaphysical sense, even just explaining the world around us, systemic analysis is not something people are born with. So oftentimes people will rely on really simple, easy, incorrect explainers for why the world is the way it is, you know? For example, I'll give you a really, really good one, okay? I'll give you a really good one. Capitalist realism. The belief that there's not really a way out of the system that we're in, that capitalism is the end state of human economic development, or there's no way out of it, is often promoted by the belief that humans are naturally greedy. You've probably heard that from people who aren't even that political, right? Like, you don't need to be some kind of, like, super ultra-conservative to say that. That's a pretty commonly held belief. Oh, yeah, humans are just naturally greedy, and, you know, like, these are always going to be a problem, that kind of thing. What that is a simple, wrong explanation for a real systemic problem, which is how the structures of capitalism incentivize bad behaviors. But that systemic analysis, that's complicated. It requires an education. Believing that humans are greedy doesn't. It can be done immediately. It can be done without any kind of education. It can be done without much understanding of the issue, you know? So people default to it because nobody wants to answer with, I don't know. People don't like I don't knows. That's why it takes really confident people to admit when they don't know something. Admitting that you don't know something is, many people consider it a sign of weakness, but it's also really internally frustrating to believe there's some kind of like big thing going on and you just aren't in on it. Like, not only are you not behind the wheel, not only are you not controlling what's going on, but you don't even like know. You're just like a drift. That's really frustrating for people. So everyone wants to believe they know what's going on, and they'll default to the answers that they're capable of. So getting back to the answers people are capable of, the problem is that a lot of people aren't capable of shit. A lot of people are dumb as bricks, I'm afraid. They're dumb as bricks, and they have pre-existing beliefs that they're trying to confirm. Usually, when it comes to conspiracy theories, those beliefs are understandable, like a distrust of wealth and power. I mean, hey, same. That can fuel bad ideas. or they're less understandable, like, say, being racist or anti-Semitic, though often these things are comorbid to some extent or another. You know, this is the reason why anti-Semites frame their anti-Semitism in the language of them being the oppressed under Jewish people. Nobody wants to admit they're the oppressor. That requires a degree of honesty that few people can actually live up to. So we get conspiracy theories like this. We get default answers like this because people want to be part of that, you know, small special crew of people who have arrived at the fundamental truth of the world. And hey, it's conveniently simple enough for them to understand. And we're going to have to deal with more of it as time goes on, guys. Like, this is going to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And I don't really know what to deal about, like how to deal with it, you know? I think this is why I'm so anti-conspiracy brain. This is why I'm so insistent on not being conspiracy minded, or at the very least, if you have to make leaps in logic because there's missing information, try to proportion your confidence to the likelihood and availability of information. You know, it's because it just always leads down a bad path. Vaush, you were being conspiratorial in that last segment, so that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about, and it's why I said what I just said. So I don't really think there's much comparison that can be made between space lasers made the government do fire in Hawaii because they want to make 15-minute city 17s to, I think, this obviously astroturfed conservative song being promoted by somebody who had all of his socials made at the same time as his weird anti-Semitic playlist, and we know for a fact he's being backed by somebody who worked with the Blaze when the Blaze was being run by a neo-Nazi. I don't think these are the same levels of conspiracy. We don't always have access to the same information, or sorry, to like the same or ideal level of information. We have to make guesses sometimes based on available info, but that's okay. The goal then is to make sure they're informed guesses, to make sure that it's a rational analysis you can make, right? Like, we don't actually know a lot of what went on Epstein's Island. We don't know for a fact because the people who were there aren't being prosecuted, and for some reason, we're not getting as thorough of an investigation as we would get if this was, say, a pedo group of poor people, or like, you know, the grooming gangs over in Europe or whatever, like that kind of crap. So we have to fill in some blanks. But I think the blanks that we fill in are reasonable. And also, I think it's okay to make guesses and to be wrong as long as the guesses are valid and justifiable. For example, if a person is taken into police custody and beaten so badly that they die, you know, we don't actually know they were beaten, right? Like the Iranian hijab protests that broke out last year, those broke out after a Kurdish woman was arrested by the Iranian morality police, and she died in police custody. But we don't actually know what the police did to her. Maybe she fell down 50 million flights of stairs, right? Well, no, obviously that's a very stupid thing to say. But it's also what the police said, kind of. As is so often the case when police beat somebody to death, they're like, whoa, didn't even touch the guy. 50 flights of stairs. They were beating their head against the wall over and over. We asked them to stop. And that's how you get like half of local news is just like local news stations repeating police, you know, like press releases without any critical inquiry, no matter how ridiculous the shit they say is. Like, how many times have cops talked about how they got sick off of fentanyl exposure, right? Hundreds of times, and it's not real. It's just that police officers are either A, lying to fearmonger, or B, insane like drug war evangelicals who fall prey to it themselves due to the placebo effect, you know? Or they just did fentanyl. They like doing drugs they take. We know they do that. So I don't think it's conspiratorial to be suspicious of those narratives. I don't think it's conspiratorial necessarily to believe in the whole like right-wing psyop shit that I believe about that Anthony something, the Redbeard conservative singer with the Nazi shit, you know. I don't think those things are bad, you know. I think this is bad. It's kind of like finding the healthy balance between condemning conspiracism on principle, but not falling into the liberal trap of only believing the narrative that you're told. Because if you only believe the narrative that you're told, right? Like if you don't engage with the material you're given with any degree of skepticism, then you're kind of fucked when it comes to affecting any kind of systemic change. Oftentimes, the information that we're given is given by biased sources. And if we just take all of that at face value, then, well, sometimes biased sources are correct, right? Police don't lie 100% of the time. Sometimes you can take a look at a police report of what's happened and it seems fine, and it turns out that it's true, and that's that. They just told the truth. That can happen. In fact, it happens all the time. But as you get better at critical analysis and at critical thinking, you can learn what's suspicious and what isn't. You can listen to, like, for example, that North Korean defect lady and, like, hear shit she says and think, okay, I don't think that's true. Like, she'll say some stuff that sounds right and some stuff that doesn't, and it's about working out what seems like it's a reasonable extrapolation from the information you have available to you. But keep in mind that none of what I'm talking about right now refers to this, because this is not a reasonable extrapolation based on available information. This is a psychotic leap in logic brought about by people who don't really have consistent beliefs but are acting out of fear of some potential outcomes. Yes, it is the media literacy argument, but that's what I'm talking about here. Because every time people talk about conspiracy theories, I get this, it's the same discourse every time, Because on one side of things, you have lunatics who will believe anything that confirms their priors. And on the other side of things, you have liberals who will argue shit like, well, aren't you just as bad because you don't think Epstein killed himself? Wow. You challenged this police blotter. Are you telling me that you think it's okay to just think the police are lying? Well, how does that make any sense? It's critical thinking on both sides, right? But I don't think that there's much comparison between this and that. This is its whole other thing. And it's going to get worse with time, man. You get me, don't you? Yes, I'm getting you. Nice. I agree these are different levels, just wondering what you do to prevent getting to this level. It's just about critical thinking. It is, and there's no shortcut to that. But in the meantime, so this is like, we're talking about how to refine a complicated process okay, we're rock climbers. And I'm trying to explain how I think there's like a perfect balance between confidence and caution when moving up a rock wall. And then we're like, okay, so how do we avoid getting to this state? And like we point at the corner of the room and there's a guy who's shooting himself in the kneecaps and screaming about how the Jews are sniping him from like a distant window. And I agree that a good understanding of how to rock climb probably involves not shooting yourself in the kneecaps. That feels like something a good rock climber wouldn't do in the process of rock climbing. But I feel like what this is so far away from a lesson on critical thinking that it should be treated as something different. I think that there's a difference between like skepticism and inquiry and being suspicious of a narrative and whatever the fuck this is, right? So my point is we're going to have to deal with a lot more of this bad stuff as time goes on. And a good way to prevent yourself from falling into this, is by not being an actual drooling retard. That would really help if you were a functioning human who is sentient. If you're a sentient human, that would be good. Just remember, okay? The people who fall into these conspiracy theories don't really believe them. That's why when you see them post about them, they very rarely give out a concrete and detailed explanation for what they think happened. Instead, they just say shit like, suspicious, this is what they want you to believe. The real thing they believe is usually a crippling, paralyzing fear of a specific thing, generally a racial minority or Jewish people. They fear that group, and so every bias they fall into, every conspiracy they bite into, is just another way of reaffirming some kind of prior. You could challenge them on this, like, space laser thing, and they would back off it instantly. They would shiftlessly move to another position. They would cycle around 20 of them that are all mutually exclusive, but somehow they would defend all of them for just one moment before shifting to the next one. You would never pin them down on anything. I've argued with Jewish question believers. Trust me, I've seen this happen so many times. But there is one thing that a JQ believer will not back off of, and it's the underlying belief, which is anti-Semitism. And likewise with these conspiracy theorists, it's probably anti-Semitism. It could be some other stuff, but it's probably anti-Semitism. They won't back off that because that's the thing that animates the other beliefs they hold. Does that make sense? It's like understanding why people believe the things they believe and whether or not they actually do believe them, or in like a materialist sense, or if they only believe them in a kind of abstract, it assists the narrative sense. You know what I mean? Generally speaking, a good strategy is to understand that you're not actually arguing over the conspiracy theory they claim to believe. You're arguing over the thing they believe makes them believe the conspiracy theory.